Hello and welcome to CAPUCHIN TV for another exclusive interview with me, Maureen Kimani, as we bring you a very interesting discussion that is compounding stress. And this program is brought to you by Tranquil Med Center in Karen. And just as you can take a look on our background today, you've been used to the studio, and today we are at Tranquil Med Center Karen Hadi branch, and it's the newest baby for Tranquil Med, and we're very delighted to have this conversation with you. So in case you'd love to be part of this discussion, please do not hesitate to reach out to us on 0717 424 866, or you can use the SMS number that is 21760 as we get to understand more about our discussion today. And just to give you a very brief introduction on about our discussion, in Kenya today, it can feel we are constantly putting out fires. There are bills to pay, there is school fees to worry about, relationships, we have family responsibility, we have loss, a lot is happening, and again, worrying about our future. So do stick around as we have this interesting conversation. And with me here today, I have two panelists who will be helping us to understand more by telling us more about our conversation today. Welcome. Very good morning. Hello to you.
Hello. Good morning.
Yeah, so happy to be here at your facility, being the first time coming to have this conversation from your side. Very delighted to even listen to you, what you have to tell our viewers today. So karibuni sana.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to begin with you, Victor, kindly tell our viewers who you are and what you do here.
Okay, yes. So, hi again, and good morning. Okay, not good morning. Basically, it's morning here, except. But yes, my name is Victor Kibuga. I'm a clinical psychologist here at Tranquil Med Center. Tranquil Med Center is basically a mental health hospital. Basically, we cater to all your mental health needs, including psychiatric needs. We are located at Karen. This is our second branch, Hadi. And we have our first branch, which is along Mamba Village Road, Ituro Lane, Gate 10. So feel free to visit us for any mental health needs or all your mental health needs. Yeah, thank you.
So moving on to our beautiful lady there, Winnie. Kindly say hello to our viewer.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Winnie Orodi. I am a clinical psychologist as well. I work at Tranquil Med Center, and I'm really excited about today's discussion. Yes.
Thank you so much for your brief introduction. Let's get started with our conversation today, as we have this compounding stress. I feel it's a conversation that we all know about, but we don't talk about it a lot. So when you talk about compounding stress, what is it all about, and how do you define stress? Because I think we had a conversation before we began this live, because I mentioned most of the times you hear people having a discussion or just talking like a normal conversation, and then you hear people saying, wait, usililete stress bana.
Absolutely.
How do you differentiate compounding stress and the normal stress that we are talking about? Yeah, what's the difference, Victor?
Okay, so basically from the topic, compounding stress is stress that is accumulated over a prolonged period of time. So, I mean, stress is a normal part of life. It's your normal body reaction system to telling you that there's a threat, or a perceived threat rather. And so your brain is able to assess and see what kind of threat is this. Sometimes your brain is not able to actually perceive correctly. So you may think that something that is potentially harmful or bad is actually more harmful than it actually is. And so when it comes to now stress, that's how your body reacts to it. But then over time, if this is compounded, if this continues or goes forward or goes on for a long period of time, then now that is what we call compounding stress. Yes.
All right. And Winnie, I feel, as I mentioned, that Kenyans feel we are constantly putting out fires. What are some of the things that Kenyans feel they are overwhelmed about?
Maybe just to start by building on what Victor was talking about, you know, in Central we have seen women carrying firewood on their backs. Yes, a bunch of firewood, and up to a certain extent they are able to carry it. Now, compounding stress, imagine if someone kept on adding one more stick. maybe she started out walking upright, being able to handle that bundle of firewood. But over time, as you add on the firewood, the sticks, it becomes way too much, and eventually she might just succumb, collapse because of the increasing weight. Yes, so that's an analogy I like to use to describe what compounding stress feels like. Yes, so you'd ask the question around what's happening in the Kenyan context. Yes, is it that we are more stressed than our parents and the previous generations? I wouldn't say not necessarily, but our capacity, like Victor was talking about here, has been stretched in every direction. Stress is actually a good response, a good reaction to be able to mitigate, because when a stressful situation emerges, you're taken into like a fight-flight kind of, you're hyper-focused on a task. For instance, if you have an approaching deadline, a task that was supposed to be done maybe in 4 hours, you end up doing it in 2 hours because you're able to stay alert and focused and be able to perform. But at that rate, your mind is producing a lot of stress hormones in your body. Your muscles are tense, your pupils are dilated, you're zoomed into the task. Now, what happens if from one task you're moving to another stressful task, to another stressful day, to another stressful week, month? So you're constantly in this state of hyper-arousal. That's where the problem is. And we're in the hustle culture, The average Kenyan has more than one job. We are still having families. We've become a bit more individualistic. We are not as collective as we used to be. So responsibility is like it's up to you to raise your child. It's not like we had communities back then, so you could spread out a bit of your tasks. So the stresses are still the same. It's just that we've become a bit more individualistic as a culture, especially here in Nairobi. So it's up to you to take care of your kids and move through the different spaces that you need to move to, from one job to the next, to the side gig. And that compounds over time, and it can be detrimental when you're in this state of hyper-arousal. Yeah.
And something else, Victor, because I think in our society we've had a norm. Once like you come out from work, be it couples, be it your family, be it your parent, the first thing when you get to the house they ask you is, how was your day? Once like you finish your weekend, when you get back to work, your colleagues starts to ask you, how was your weekend? You either say it was nice, it was very stressful. How do you differentiate stress and burnout, and when you need to take a break?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd say stress actually is what leads to burnout. So over time, as your body is not able to pick up, she gave the analogy of firewood basically. So over time, you're getting more and more stress. And the problem is not getting more stress because throughout life you're expected to face these stresses. It's because you're not able to channel or find coping mechanisms that will help you deal with whatever you already have. So most of the times what we do, we put it on the side. Okay, I'm going to deal with this later, I'm going to deal with this later. And so over time we realize we've not dealt with anything. And so by the time your colleague is asking you how you are, yes, you're stressed, but then you don't realize it's not that particular day's stress, basically. It's been months of stress. And so once that accumulates over time, now that's what leads to burnout, where you start to feel the things that you enjoy or the things that you love to do, especially at work, become very heavy. So ideally there are responsibilities that you were supposed to meet at work, and now it's becoming harder and harder to meet some of these tasks. It's becoming harder to wake up in the morning. It's becoming harder to be enthusiastic or even smile, and so work feels so heavy, like such a heavy burden, and now that leads you to feeling as if nothing makes sense at all, basically. And so that's basically what we call burnout. So stress is related to burnout. So accumulated stress leads to burnout. Yes.
Right. And Winnie, could you kindly expound more on what are some of the signs that people need to watch out to tell this person has accumulative stress? Because the first thing when you ask even a person, they say, oh, I'm tired from Monday to Friday. I'm just tired. How tiredness is it for one to be having this stress, and then it accumulates to the compounding stress?
that's a great question. And because with that self-awareness, you're able to tell, okay, this is just stress, this is a bit much, yeah? So it manifests itself in physically. There are physical symptoms that individuals can experience. There are emotional symptoms, there are relational, behavioral, spiritual. So these are signs that you can start to look out for. For instance, physically, you've talked about exhaustion, just feeling like I am just tired, I can't seem to, your productivity, let's say it used to take you an hour to do a specific task, and now you're dragging it on. It's been 3 hours and you can't get yourself to do the work, So you can start to see that. Maybe physically, we could also pair that with the behavioral aspects of it. You start to see the way somebody is moving, their posture. They don't have that alertness that they used to have, or they seem to be, looking for keys that they are holding, double checking things that are already in place. Victor, are you starting to identify some? Yes. So there are those behavioral things that you can start to look out, or forgetfulness. Mentally, you can start to see things like forgetfulness, inattention, not being able to focus on a specific task and being able to conclude, inability to prioritize, you're starting a task and leaving it halfway, picking up another one. Let's say you used to enjoy reading, you can't get yourself to sit down and read a book, or you don't have the mental capacity to do that. Emotionally, it could look like irritability. You don't have the bandwidth to listen to, let's say you have children, they're like, mommy this, mommy that, and it's just like, no, you're getting home into your bedroom. Or you don't have kids, you're just on Netflix, not finishing a specific, you're starting a movie, moving on to the next one, or just binging after work instead of maybe previously that's not what you used to do, or even just mindless scrolling. Sometimes it's like you're trying to escape the current stressors in your life. Behaviorally, you can start to look at maybe inattention to how you used to groom, not being able to be compassionate and present. Those are some of the things. Spiritually, stress, you can find that someone that maybe used to really practice their spirituality, morning devotion, go to church, they're starting to slack back and just, not show up as consistently as they used to. So there are those, you can look out using those 5 domains, physical, emotional, mental, to start to see. But maybe lashing out, anger, you could see emotional outbursts sometimes, things like that. And sometimes even you might get feedback, people telling, hey, these days you're impatient, or maybe you're, hey, these days unakuanga umejaa, what's up, So those are things to look out for. Those are indicators that maybe you're really pushing yourself beyond your capacity. Yes.
And that's very interesting, and it just brings me a question to ask you, Victor. Can stress affect the body? Of course, I would say yes, if you were to ask me about it, because you tend to hear people saying, hey, mtu siku hizi anakula sana. Some people, they say when they're super stressed, they eat a lot, some sleep a lot, some they stay awake. How do you deal with this? How do you manage this stress?
So yes, stress definitely affects your body. And I'll give it from a very scientific perspective of how that process actually happens. So by the time you're getting stressed, the amygdala, which is part of the brain, gets to perceive something and see, okay, there's a stressor, there's something that's potentially difficult ahead of me. And so it alerts the system. Basically, there's something here that we need, let's take a look about, what this could be about, basically. And then now the prefrontal cortex gets to assess how severe is this. So if it's something too severe, your body now starts to, the rest of the processes. If it's not too severe, again, it doesn't take too much note of it. So that stimulates your adrenal glands to release adrenaline. Adrenaline is a hormone. And so adrenaline is what basically is released when you're afraid, when you're scared. I don't know if you've ever seen someone who is running from the police, for example, wakati wa maandamano. You realize someone is doing very superhuman things. Yeah, you can jump on top of a tall building, you can do all these things. So that's the work of adrenaline. It basically stimulates your body, and that's what happens when you're getting stressed. And so this will cause your rate to increase, blood pressure, of course, temperature, and so on and so forth. So with time, if your body is detecting that this is not going down, now it releases cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone, which now is responsible for affecting how your body behaves, basically. So this will go to your appetite, this will go to your sleep, this will go to your social activities, interests and whatnot. And so over time you realize people react differently. So you find someone who is stressed will begin to eat too much, more than they used to, and people are like, oh, you're looking very healthy now, you're added some weight, and it's not a good thing. It's actually stress. They're not able to sleep, or sometimes they're oversleeping. So both ways, because people react differently. Sometimes people become extra talkative. Someone was very quiet and you're thinking, oh, this person is settling in very well, except now they're reacting to stress. So they're trying to cover up the part that they're stressed and don't want to be identified. So they talk too much. Others will withdraw themselves, stay secluded. And so there are so many ways in which now your body responds to this. And over time, again, it affects you either, of course, mentally, because now you're not able to think straight, you're not able to concentrate. Now you're eating too much, or you're not eating at all. You're not able to sleep. So it's going to show in every part of your day-to-day activities. And so your body directly is affected by how your stress levels are being handled by your body. Yes.
Awesome. Winnie, I can see you nodding. Do you want to add on something what Victor has talked about?
He's captured it really well, especially the vegetative functions, because those are really vegetative functions are your appetite, your sleep, Yeah, those are the things that you really need to look out for. And it can be a bit pervasive if you do not attend to it. It starts like that. It could be maybe you're realizing you used to sleep at 9 nights going to midnight. And again, if you don't attend to it, the symptoms now become a bit more ingrained. Remember, in that state of hyperarousal where you're moving from one task to the next, you're not allowing yourself time to rest or to recoup. You're just moving, you're shifting tasks, but all the tasks need your attention now in the hustle culture, isn't it? You start to see things like if it's prolonged, if it's compounding over a duration of time, it could result in migraines, that you're taking water, nothing is happening. You're trying to sleep, you can't really sleep well. You start to see aches, like tension. You start to, especially sedentary workers, those who are constantly seated, start to see the tense muscles, You start to get muscle cramps that you don't understand especially if there's no movement involved. Then over time, for women, you might start to experience disturbances in your menses. Your sex drive changes, fluctuates. You start to get indigestion, you're bloated, Because when you're in a state of hyperarousal, under stress, your body is overly aroused because you're trying to get all these things done. There are some functions that only start working when your body is in a state of rest, like cell regeneration, digestion. When you're in a state of rest, then you're able to digest your food well. Things like even healing. You start to realize you're catching colds more often than you used to, so you just need rest. Yes, maybe those are some of the things that I could build on that. Yes.
And let's talk about, because all of us come from a family, and we've had some of the, perhaps you could call them traumatic experiences. How does these experiences affect on how we handle stress? Because I feel there are some families that the couple they met get too physical, and the kids watch these parents. When they grow up, they feel like this is how I should handle stress when I'm stressed out. When the dad comes home, women in the kitchen, they start, wana vuruga vyombo huko kitchen, unasikia ni vita inaendelea, but it's just one person. But it's because they are stressed out. They don't want to speak about it. So that's one of the way they explore and show emotions. How does these traumatic and childhood experiences affect the way we handle stress when you grow up?
That's a very good question, and I believe it forms part of the foundation of what psychology actually is. In psychology, we explore something known as unfinished business. It's an amazing theory by Sigmund Freud, who talks about our childhood experiences basically shape who we tend to become in future. And you talked about the childhood traumas. And of course, I love that you raised, even observing or looking at your environment. You don't have to necessarily beat up your child, or they don't have to experience it firsthand. They could actually be people who are watching from the sideline, and that can actually be processed in the brain. And so unfinished business is, of course, as a child, you're not able to understand what is happening because you're in this environment where you automatically accept safety, you expect safety rather, and you're thinking that these people are my trusted family. Of course, these are the people you laid sight on. Since the moment you opened your eyes, you saw your mom and you saw your dad. And so this is your safety. And so when things begin to go sideways, your brain is not able to perceive that quickly. It becomes almost like, okay, what's actually happening? And so your brain tends to develop something we call defense mechanisms, where you try to survive. So you enter a state of survival. So most people will start to become either defensive, or they may start to want to assimilate with the environment. And that's why you find some people who try they make peace. They're quick to make peace. They become people pleasers because they're so used to the violence, and they know that their body system tells them, if you try to calm down the situation, if you try to accept what is happening, then the problem is going to pass away rather. And then there's this other person who becomes defensive. They know, I need to fight, I need to talk, I need to express myself for me to feel heard. And so as you grow up, you find these two individuals, one who knows how to or has learned to defend themselves, and so they become this almost immovable element. I'm trying to look for the easiest words to just put in there. So you find someone they're not sociable. It's someone you try to express themselves. They don't trust easily. They don't associate with people easily. They're constantly irritable, and the smallest things kind of trigger them. They're very insecure because, again, growing up, they know I need to protect myself. So if you try to approach them, you must have an agenda. What are you trying to do to me? What has led you or attracted you to me? And of course, low self-esteem and so on and so forth. So these people, even the way they process stress is very different, because this person has always known that I need to fight to survive. I need to be heard. I need to raise my voice. And this other hand, there's this other person who's learned to assimilate. Not because they're comfortable, but because their brain is trying to silence the chaos. So they've always known, when my dad is angry, I try to become a nice person. So I'll go to get them some tea, go to the kitchen, do all the chores and whatnot, because I've learned when they see that, they may become happy. So this is a person who is striving to get attention, to be loved, to be appreciated. And sometimes you find someone who is going through something and they're trying to even seek attention. So people will be like, okay, you're trying to seek attention. Why is this small thing such a huge thing to you? Why are you crying all the time? Why are you talking about this small issue like this? And so, of course, these two people will respond differently. And it shows because, again, when you go back to their childhood, you realize the way their brain processed the situation is now what is causing them to be who they are. Yes.
And you've talked about the word that I've really loved about acceptance, because most of us, we stay in denial. We don't really want to be told, like, you're going through something, you need to seek help. And when some of the people, they're being approached on some of the way they've been behaving, and they tend to be very defensive, as you talked about, how can you help these people seek professional help? Another thing I want to talk about, Winnie, we've been experiencing so many femicide cases, and I feel that these, because I mentioned about the constantly putting up fires, and we talked about relationship is one of the things that, it's bringing out all this stress, because perhaps your spouse loses a job, you come here, you want money, he doesn't have money, and now it becomes a whole issue. How do we deal and go about these cases that we're having in our country, and how can couples, because I understand, Tranquil, you have couples therapy. What can you advise these people?
Okay, that is quite the loaded question. Okay, so I would start with understanding what Victor was talking about adverse childhood experiences, there's actually a score that you can get when you go for clinical assessment, because these things almost imprint on us and shape how we show up in relationships, how we show up at work, how we take feedback, how we what triggers us and things like that. Yes. So first of all, I would say self-awareness is very, very critical. Yes. You started by asking what can couples do about this? You know, before even you get to a couple, you as an individual, do you understand what is going on? You know, or did you just settle for, I'm just an angry person, nakuanga tu nimejam, you know, just people get on my nerves, it's the world out there, it's everything out there really. You know, are you taking a minute to step back and ask yourself, okay, what's going on here for you as an individual, even as you're getting into a partnership? Because if you can't self-regulate, how are you going to do it with now another person in the picture? You know, now that compounds and becomes a cocktail of chaos. You know, you've talked about femicide and all these things. Sometimes there's something called cultural trauma. Sometimes we live in a world that I might end up talking about social change and structural violence that happens, that cultural things that sometimes can perpetuate or leave a certain gender experiencing a lot of turmoil. Yes, we've seen communities that still practice FGM and things like that, and just cultural things that we really need to look into. And because all these things compound and result in femicide. I don't think femicide is an easy thing that we can say this is what caused the femicide. You know, there's substance use, there's tough economic times, and there's people not knowing what's going on internally, there's mental illnesses. All that compounds into now what we are seeing out here. Yes, but on a personal level, yes, at Tranquil we offer family therapy. And even as we're doing the family therapy, you'll realize that individuals will sometimes be taken apart to be addressed individually, because there are things that you have to first have insight of. Yes, there's a tool called the Johari window. There are things you know to be true about yourself, and others know about that. That's the open arena. Then there are things that other people know about you and you don't know about yourself. So it's through feedback that you're able to explore that. Or in therapy, you might realize that certain patterns in your life keep repeating themselves. You know, you always end up, you know, your relationships tend to end a certain way. You tend to date a certain type of people. Why is that? You know, when you come for personal therapy or for couples therapy, you'll have an opportunity to explore things like that. Because again, individuals are different. Yeah, there are different things that can push us to show up in the world in the way that we do. I don't know, Victor, if you want to build on that, on the couples therapy.
Yeah. Of course, as Winnie is putting it, individual self-assessment is very important. You need to be very self-aware of yourself, because many times you find that people will always point out to the problem outside. It is them that did this to me. It is this that makes me angry. It is the environment. But then many times through therapy, you sit down and ask, what have you contributed? What have you done? What part have you taken in this? As much as you didn't deserve to go through the trauma, as much as all this is something that's against you, but then in what way have you contributed to the problem? And many times people, even who have not, you know, ask someone that and they say, I've not done anything. I was just born, that's the only problem, that's the only mistake, you know. But then over time, as you sit through therapy, you're able to explore some of the areas where this person may have contributed, and they begin to see, okay, fine, I did this. Maybe I was very ignorant in this area. I never take accountability. I am too quick to judge people. I do this and this. And then once you're able to understand that, you realize it becomes very easy even to deal with other people. So the couples issue is resolved. The femicide issue is something that's also something that we need a very serious conversation about, because again, she's talked about cultural trauma, where of course things, and it's very unfortunate nowadays if you talk to especially young people about marriage, such a bad perspective. Marriage kwa kwenye ndoa, that's what they say. You know, it's bad, it's terrible. You know, I can never get married. Ni kungumu. Ndoa ni they say, in fact, marriage is for stupid people, which is very unfortunate. And you'd understand they're speaking from a place of trauma, maybe something that they've observed, or things that they've gone through, because they've realized marriage is full of issues. But then you sit down with people, and they're able to explore some of their own challenges, some of the traumas that they've witnessed. Does not necessarily mean because your parents went through that, other people, yourself will also go through that. You're able to break that continuation pattern. You're able to say, okay, with me, I'm going to make things different. And so that's where change actually starts from. Yeah.
Awesome. And for someone perhaps watching this conversation or listening to this conversation, and they feel some of the things that we've been able to speak about here, they feel like nimeguzwa hapo, ni mimi wanaongelelea, that's how they say it. How long should they evaluate themselves and watch out? And as you mentioned about self-awareness, wajiite kamkutano one, by the way, this and that has been happening to me. So how long should they evaluate themselves? Is it a period of perhaps 1 month and then seek professional help? Or is it perhaps a week or even 2 months? How long should these signs that we have been mentioning about of compounding stress go for?
I think that is determinant. It's dependent on the symptoms. Like, what are you experiencing? If you cannot sleep at all, please go to the doctor immediately. You know, if you're realizing you've gone to bed at 9, it's 10, it's 12, it is 3 in the morning, it's 2, it's 4, you've not yet fallen asleep, you need to seek medical attention. So the severity of the symptoms will determine, you know. Things like, how is your sleep, how is your appetite, you know, how is your weight, those are things that you can use. For instance, if you're having a persistent migraine that is not really going away. So first of all, it starts by take a step back, evaluate all these symptoms, go to your GP first of all, find out, is there any physical causation of these things that you're experiencing? Because a lot of times we are taking medication for something that is psychological. So the physical symptoms have been ruled out, then now you move to the next step. Okay, do I need a psychiatric assessment? And there's a lot of stigma around that. You don't need to be full-blown psychotic to check into a psychiatric facility, you know. It could be you're experiencing financial stress and you can't find a way to, okay, what do I need to prioritize first? And your maybe bills are piling up, your relationship is being strained, and you know, it's just affecting all areas of your life that you're realizing your capacity is diminishing. You can go visit, you can come to Tranquil, get an assessment, and sometimes it could be a one-off, just to get an assessment to know, okay, what's going on. And if it's something that you're able to manage, you can do it outpatient. You know, you don't have to be checked into a facility to be treated. You know, it's just like how you can, it's like, you know how you have the annual reviews? I feel like psychiatric assessment should be one of those, that you just go check in with your psychologist, see, okay, how am I doing, what's going on, like to do an audit of your emotional wellness. Yes, so you don't have to wait for the symptoms to be very severe, because when they are very severe, also the interventions will be a bit in-depth. Yeah.
All right. And let's talk about, because I feel compounding stress has an effect to parenthood and again on friendships, and friendships are very important. So as a person, how do you feel like you're supposed to watch out and to follow up with your friends to see how they're suffering? Because I feel we're all dealing with a lot. As you mentioned, we have financial constraints, we have, I don't know, your family, you have a loss, you lost maybe your relative, your family member. So I feel there's a lot and we don't pay attention to what our friends are going through. And again, we become too selfish. We don't reach out, because when you feel someone has really withdrawn from you, you feel, sikuizi huyu mtu ako na maringo, hataki stories zetu. How can we help our friends, our relatives, our family members just to watch out and to help them walk through this journey and to perhaps visit the facility that is Tranquil for them to seek help?
That's a very important question. For the longest time, I feel like I had not understood what it means to be very occupied to the place that you are not able even to check in on other people. And I used to be one of those people who would complain to my friends, why don't you check on me? What's up? What's wrong with you? Are we friends anymore? You know. But then I come to understand, of course, as you grow up, more responsibilities and whatnot, and you realize everybody's working on something. People are in school, people are working, people are stressed, people have so many things that sometimes it can be very difficult to do this. However, it's not impossible. It has to be very intentional, because when you put your mind to something, you're able to follow through with it. So I tell people, including myself, that it has to come from a place of intentionality. There has to be a friendship is an agreement, more like a treaty. You know? So you've decided to be friends. And of course, people need to be very serious when it comes to friendships. We need to have a conversation about our friendship and how in what ways are we benefiting, so that you know where you stand. Sometimes you have expectations on people who are not there as friends; they're just there,
acquaintances
with each other. So for the people that you have established that these are people I want in my life, an intentional check-in is very important. You can have a weekly check-in, and some you can agree. You can have a monthly, but it's too long. Bi-weekly, probably something that is consistent. You may not be able to talk every day, but then ensure that even as you communicate, it's not just about asking how you are. It's just about me being able to respond honestly about exactly how I am. And that's what friendship is. And I may not be able to see you from where you are, but at least I want to know that when you tell me this, I can be able to trust the word. However, there are people who may not be able to share how they are. Maybe from their childhood experiences going back there, they are taught to mask and to say everything is fine, because they realize life is cosmetic from how their parents handle things. You know, sometimes there's no food in the house, there's nothing. And guests are there and parents look okay and they're not talking about the problem. So for them, they learn, we don't talk about our problems, let's mask up. And so this person, you can be able to observe. If your friend changes from, the growth is inevitable, people change, but then there's that change which is very, suspicious, that's a better word. Someone needs to be very outgoing, all of a sudden they've gone down. There are things that they're not able to do, their energy has gone down. I feel like you should be able to probe more, and if possible even make physical visits sometime to go see somebody, your family, your friends, your relatives, and so on and so forth. That goes a long way to ensure that everybody is benefiting from this mental health conversation that we're talking about. It has to be practical. It's not just sitting in interviews like this or talking about it on podcasts. It's a hot topic on podcasts, very catchy, but then you have to hit the ground running, like be on the ground and actually do the work, which means checking on people, moving, talking about mental health, and many other things that we can be able to do.
Okay. And again, we of course have good listening skills, because sometimes you may tend to open up, but the person you're going to open up to, sasa yeye anaanza kukuambia, by the way, hata mimi ama sijui something happened. So yes, so
other people's issues.
Yes. So they shut you down and you totally don't open up at all. So I think it's also a virtue for us to learn in. We have good listening skills. What do you have to say, Winnie?
I think that's a rare, to find a friend that is actually a good listener. Please keep them. That's a gem. Yes, because it's a skill really to be able to listen attentively, and it takes a lot of mental strain to be able to fully listen. Can you picture yourself trying to listen when you're hungry or when you're tired? You see? So it requires of you to fully be there, be present, and it's something that you can learn. For instance, how you're looking at me, how you're nodding. Imagine if your body was, faced the other way, and let's say you're on your phone, I'm talking to you and your attention is, you're not making eye contact. So body language sometimes is a good way to just check if someone is listening or not, There are people who naturally just are really good listeners, or maybe they've learned by imitating their parents, or they've grown up in spaces where that has been modeled. But for a lot of us, we have to learn how to listen actively, you know, instead of one uppering the other person. You know, someone tells you, oh, I saw a green outfit, and they're like, yeah, me too, let me tell you what I saw. They're cutting you off, you've not concluded, they're telling you what they want to share. So learning to just, what is this person saying? You know, witness their experience without necessarily feeling the pressure to also match them up there. It's something that if we're intentional about and just be cautious about, we can practice and be good at over time. Yeah, because a lot of us do not, yes, do not really practice listening.
Okay. And as we perhaps wrap up with our conversation, how can support groups, how can churches, how can workplaces or bosses support the staff they have by helping them go through this journey? As we mentioned, we have burnout. So sometimes you may be working and you're trying to explain to your boss, by the way, I have a burnout, I need a day off. But they just, you have to come to work. Sometimes you just want to have your me time. But these people, they don't understand, like, you want to have your me time as you go self-evaluate yourself. They just want you to be there present. You have to be present. How can the supporters, how can they support family members? Because if people don't watch out and they don't listen to you, as you mentioned, Winnie, some they don't have good listening skills. I'm trying to explain why I want to take my day off, why I want to have my me time if you're in your house, but they don't understand that. How can we support all these people? Because I feel if you don't take rest can also affect how we perform, as you mentioned when we began with the conversation. How do we support all these groups? How can we have this conversation in churches? How can we have this conversation in our chamas? Because I feel that's why we begin the conversation, because as much as you have a larger group to talk to, they can help to disseminate the information to other people. So how do we go about this? Because we've been talking about compounding stress or what I need to do. Yes, you have watched the signs. So what next? Yeah.
Very, very interesting conversation. I'd say it's a very communal responsibility. Everybody has to be a stakeholder in this conversation. Everybody has to do their part. We talked about churches. And something that I'm realizing, which is really good, many churches right now have a counseling department within the church. You know, many times, especially in the African context, we're used to the spiritual aspect. This department is spiritual, you know, let's pray about this. But then we realize there are things, of course prayer is good, except prayer can also be paired with other things, because God created all these interventions, psychologists, doctors. It's God who's given them the wisdom to do all this kind of work, and so pairing them is very important. So let's not just be, oh, we're Itaisha, oh, they're just being rebellious, they're just being, it's a devil, you know, it's demons. But it has to come from a place of understanding, and that's also part of listening. So listening is not just the words; you can also listen to the general body language of people. What's the ground saying? You know? And so that's a good intervention from churches. Schools also having a psychological department where the therapists or the counselors are not the teachers, because you're used to teachers where when your counselor, it can't work, because again this is the same math teacher who is instilling canes in the classroom, and you expect a student to come and visit you and talk to you about their problems. It's not possible. So we have to stop taking it as a light thing, because people look at it, oh, she's just talking, she's just sharing your problems, you know, it's gonna pass. But then looking at it from the perspective of professionalism, yes, we need professional counselors, professional therapists in these institutions to be able to ensure that this the work is done professionally. We also talked about basically what the community can be able to do. Of course, I've seen NGOs and many stakeholders come together and have movements where young people can be part of. So part of basically having peer counseling groups where people of the same age are put together and they have conversations, speaking about drugs, about all these things. Because again, all this is coming from a place of stress. Most people addicted will find that they are using alcohol or drugs as a coping mechanism. And so when you have this conversation moving, it becomes very, very easy to ensure that this problem is defeated or is gone.
Okay.
Maybe just to build on that.
Yeah, sure.
You can be a very healthy individual working in a very sick structure. Yes, and sometimes the context is what is very sick. And what does that look like? That can look like what you're talking about. Let's say you're a new mom. You finished your 3 months maternity leave. You're requesting, sometimes it's not even me time, it's a legitimate need. Maybe your child is sick, you really need to attend to something else that is now compounding on the stress that you already have at work, and you're trying to ask for time off, and the policies are so rigid, they're not people-centered, and unfortunately we live in a capitalist world that it is about profit. The policies are not very human-centered, you know. So at that level, organizations really need to look at their systems to see how to, is this policy human-centered, you know. For instance, in your workspaces, do we have nurseries? You know, things like that. There are those little things that you can start to incorporate in the workspace. You know, do you have half days maybe for certain employees? If they are new moms, what are you doing to accommodate your people? Because if the people are well taken care of, even performance goes high. Instead of trying to wring people of all their talent and time, that they are so dry and burnt out that their capacity to even be creative and innovative in the workspace is completely diminished. Yeah, and that's how burnout now comes out, because now what's the point? Yes, I'm making all this money, but at what cost? And we've seen people quit from very nice, high-paying jobs, but all they did is travel, be out of the country. They are moving to their own detriment. You know, there's nothing wrong with travel. I love traveling, but sometimes you're really pushed by the policies in the spaces that you're in, and this is a conversation that churches can start to have at that level, even with the leaders, because the decision makers attend churches and in different. It doesn't have just to be in the churches, but even HRs. You know, just review your policies. Are they human-centered? There's a project we did back, I think in 2017, where we're doing police reviews, looking at, it's not a police force, it's a police service, you know, even just healing the language, you know, is it a police service or a police force? Because that also instills something in the culture of the people that are under that institution. So at that level, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen, reviews that need to be done, and move towards well-being, because sometimes the violence or the stressors are very structural, and we have seen Gen Z saying this 8 to 5. People are there 8 to 5, but what is their productivity time? You know, what is their you know? And sometimes people say, oh, there are some jobs that you are actually better off working from home, or would you rather just someone comes, sits at the desk, muone amekaa kwa desk, laptop imewashwa, but maybe they're not even doing the work. So trying to move to trauma-informed care, you know, moving from understanding that when an individual is properly taken care of, that's when they're most creative, most innovative, most productive, you know, instead of trying to drive them to the bone, you know, that is just depleting them. And it doesn't serve anyone. Yeah.
All right. And something we could have forgotten, Victor, because we've been able to expound on the discussion. What are some of the healthy habits that people need to do to manage stress? Yes, it's a very critical.
Definitely. Daily check-ins. Because sometimes before this stress is compounding, it started as a small match in the forest, and before you realize it, it's when now things have gone, you know, haywire. And so daily check-ins are very important. At the end of the day, coming with your mind and sitting down and asking yourself, what have I done today? what has stressed me, what has triggered me, what made me happy, what made me sad. How did I respond to this particular thing? How did I deal with my time? How did I manage 1, 2, 3 things? And so that is a good habit people can start to use, because now that gives you a trajectory of how you're doing, so that it's not 2 weeks down the line and is when you're realizing, oh, my blood pressure has been so high, I've been having migraines and whatnot. But then when it starts, you're able to pick it up. Like, yeah, as when you were saying, like, I didn't sleep well last night, I didn't have an appetite. You can evaluate and see what caused that. So you can realize, okay, there is nothing major. It's not that I wasn't hungry. I was hungry before, but then when it came time to eat, I wasn't able to eat. So you realize, okay, there's a problem, and you're able to process that. So that's one of the healthy habits you can start with. Number 2, physical exercise. When you get your blood flowing, it becomes very easy. It's like, when you're seated, I like to look at it from a water tank that is releasing water slowly. Over time, you realize that because there is not a lot of pressure, the pipes are easily clogged. But then when water is moving at different intervals, it's moving quickly, slowly, the system is cleaned. And so your body needs that physical exercise. You need to burn some of that energy. You need to burn some of that rage inside. So waking up, doing some workouts, being able to become productive, moving around, that can be something that's very healthy. Number 3, your diet. Your diet plays a huge role in how you feel, basically. If you're not taking enough protein, of course, there's a way your body is going to react. If you're not taking enough vitamins, in fact, part of mental health is having an assessment of your body, like even having your blood assessed to see what are some of the stress hormones, what are some of the vitamins. Are you deprived? Are you what's the word? Malnutrition, malnourished, that's a word. Are you malnourished? And you're able to, in fact, the stress that you have is because you don't have magnesium in your body, is because you lack a certain vitamin. And so diet is very important. When you eat healthily, it also means your brain becomes healthy. And of course, there's so many other things that we can be able to do slowly by slowly. Apart from the good things, sometimes we do bad things as well as coping mechanisms. You realize that when someone is stressed, what do? They run quickly to alcohol. Maybe let me take some alcohol, let me smoke. Some of these things can counter the healthy strides that you could have made when it comes to the healthy habits. So again, you can do good things, but then the moment you start doing negative coping mechanisms where you're stuck on social media, yes, I'm stressed. Does it mean I should stay for 6 hours on TikTok laughing because laughing makes me feel good, there has to be a balance, of course. And so we watch out as we do the good things. Also, let's not find ourselves in the bad things. I could be doing exercise, but then I can also overdo exercise. It doesn't mean that I need to now do exercise for 8 hours straight. I have to have a balance in how I'm managing some of these things. So yes, that's what I'd say about that.
Awesome. This has been quite a very interesting conversation to speak about, and I know we cannot exhaust with all the information that we need to lay out to our viewer, but thank you very much to you, Winnie and Victor, for helping our viewer to understand more and shedding more light about compounding stress being a conversation today. I'll just give you 30 seconds to wrap up our conversation, and for the person who is watching us right now and they're just tuning in, what should they take away? That is the takeaway home point for our discussion today. 30 seconds, and tell us where we can find you. If a person has listened and they have signs and symptoms that they should come to visit your facility, where can we find you in case of the number and what they should know before they come to the facility itself?
Okay, thank you so much. 30 seconds. Okay, counting. So I would say self-awareness is key. And you're lucky if you have friends and family that can observe certain signs, but it has to start with you. Learning what does it mean, what does health look like, and what does not being healthy look like, And you can use, again, the physical, emotional to be able to tell the signs, yes? That is both for looking out for the symptoms that could be telling you that the indicators, it's like in your car and the lights start coming on, you start, You know it's time to service or to baby fuel, or so your body will give you cues physically, emotionally, in terms of your relationship. Look at the quality of your relationships. Look at the quality of your spiritual life. How is that functioning? Yes. So when you know these symptoms, interventions or remedy even before you get to a psychiatric facility, also use those same facets to be able to address the illness, or just to be able to intervene. What are you doing physically? The movement that he was talking about. What are you doing emotionally? Look, how are you taking care of your emotional health? How are you talking about your spiritual health? How are you talking about what are you doing to make sure that your mental wellness is up to par? Because sometimes you can start working out and you think that's all you need to do, but you use all these other facets. And intervention is here. It's available. So it's not weakness to be experiencing all these things. Know that you're human, and if you're pushed to the core, you need to be refueled. Yeah. So prevention is better than cure. You better start having a healthy lifestyle early enough. I think Victor will talk about where we are located.
Right. So part of what Winnie has said, being able to prevent, it's better than getting there and now we are looking for every form of intervention to try and mitigate the situation. I tell people to be gracious with themselves. You're not exceptional. Everybody can go through mental health challenges. It's not for a certain group of people, anybody and whatever stage of life. So again, there's that aspect of feeling like, okay, I feel like I'm too experienced to go through mental health challenges, or this is just another season in my life, I can overcome it. I mean, attitude is good, positivity, yeah. However, you need help. No one has it all figured out. You need to talk to people, and that's where we come in as Tranquil Med Center. As we said earlier, we are located at Karen. We have 2 branches, Karen Hadi and Karen off Langata North Road. The route that goes to Mamba Village, that would be Gituro Lane, Gate 10. That's our main branch. This is our second branch, which is at Hadi. You can look through your maps, Google Tranquil Med Center, Hadi, or Tranquil Med Center, Langata Road. You're going to see the location. It's going to bring you right at our doorstep. You can find us on all social media platforms, Tranquil Med Center. We have a website, tranquilmedcenter.org. So on Facebook, on TikTok, on Instagram, Nimingi. So all of them, we are there. And of course, our numbers will be displayed up at your screen, so you can reach out. You'll be able to be directed on what to do. We take both inpatient and outpatient clients. So if you don't have to be, of course, they acknowledge mental health. You must be someone who's insane. That's not the case. You can come here just to relax. You can take a weekend off and say, I'm going to this center to just, take my time and just enjoy. As you can see, the serenity is really amazing here and very tranquil. And so you don't have to be clinically unwell. You can come just to have a therapy session. You can come also as an outpatient. We take all forms of insurance, most of the insurances, so you can call us and check your insurance. And of course, we also take cash. And most recently, we're taking also SHA. So feel welcome to come visit us. Yeah.
Very quite an eye-opening of this conversation. So thank you to Winnie and Victor for shedding more light and for, laying down the information to our viewer. And my takeaway is that seeking help is not a failure, and this is a powerful conversation to keep in your pocket. So thank you very much for tuning in. May God bless you. See you next time.